Glad that you all were able to participate with us this evening. My name is Annette Smith. I am currently the chairperson for PAMI Advisory Council, and I will also be your moderator for this evening. So before we get started, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and just to let everyone know that this presentation will be audio recorded. So by joining, you are given consent to be audio recorded. And as far as questions, we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to type your questions in the chat box at any time during the presentation. The questions will be taken at the end, and at that time, you will be able to raise your hand and ask a question or ask a question over the phone. I will explain those instructions when we get to the question and answer section. Okay, so to go further, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for this evening. Our speaker is Shira Collins. Shira is a graduate student in clinical medical health counseling at Troy University in Tampa, Florida. She is passionate about providing support to those struggling with disordered eating and body dissatisfaction and building a world that values size and diversity. Her work is informed by health at every size paradigm, fat liberation, body trust, feminists, and the disability justice movement. She frequently presents on topics related to eating disorder, treatment and prevention, as well as weight stigma and the health at every stage paradigm at conferences for mental health professionals and peers. She currently serves as the vice chair of the PAMI Advisory Council to Disability Rights Florida, providing advice and support to a statewide organization on topics relating to mental health. So without further delay, we are going to allow Shira to come and present for us this evening on weight stigma. Shira?
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight and for the introduction. I'm super excited to be here and to be talking about this topic. And I did just want to preface this presentation by saying that it is Eating Disorders Awareness Week. And this topic is very connected with eating disorders, and I'll be sharing more about that. But that's kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to share more information about weight stigma and mental health. So to start off, I wanted to define weight stigma, which is defined as bias, discrimination, or stereotyping that is based on a person's weight or body size. It's a highly prevalent form of prejudice, and it's rarely challenged. So hence the need for more conversations about it. It's also referred to sometimes as weight bias, sizeism, fat phobia, and fatnesia. And before heading further into this topic, I do just want to share that I am a person with thin privilege, and as well as other privileges too, white privilege as well. And that's definitely important to recognize when talking about this topic and other topics. Next slide. So I also wanted to share a note on language. During this presentation, I won't be using the O words listed on the slide. I don't really like saying them out loud. These terms are often stigmatizing and imply that being at a higher weight is inherently and universally unhealthy. They're kind of medical terms that are used to describe certain weights. So I will be using the language recommended by the National Eating Disorders Association, also many eating disorder treatment providers and fat activists, which is people in larger bodies and higher weight people. In addition, some activists have chosen to reclaim the word fat as a neutral descriptor. So that will also be included. Just like we talk about tall and short people, thin people, brunettes and blondes, we can also talk about fat and thin people, and it can just be neutral. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. So I will be including that word, and I just want to acknowledge that the intention is to neutralize that word, not to include it as a negative descriptor or an insult. Next slide. So here are some of the ways that weight stigma shows up. And if you have others that you'd like to add, please feel free to do that in the chat. Everyday assumptions about individuals' character, self-discipline, eating or exercise habits, and health status on the basis of body weight alone. Basically, we make this assumption that people in larger bodies must have less self-discipline or be eating in certain ways or exercising or not exercising in certain ways and be unhealthy, while we assume that thinner people do have more self-discipline and are eating in quote like correct ways or are healthier, when that's not true and there's not as much of a correlation as we're led to believe. The idealization of thinness is another way that weight stigma shows up. There's pervasive and constant promotion of weight loss in the media and in healthcare settings, just kind of constant messaging that the more weight we lose, the better, that we constantly need to be either losing weight or preventing ourselves from gaining weight. And this often comes at the cost of our health and well-being, that we're told basically to focus on that above everything else that contributes to our health or that makes life worth living. Hiring discrimination is another way this shows up. That could include income disparities, workplace and school bullying as well, discrimination and adoption and custody. That's also another way that weight stigma manifests, that BMI is sometimes a criterion used to exclude people from adoption, which not many people know. Also denial of healthcare due to body weight. So often people in larger bodies, when they seek healthcare for issues that are not at all related to weight, they're told just to lose weight, and all of the health problems they have that may have absolutely nothing to do with body weight are attributed to their weight. And there's just countless stories, if you look this up in the news and in the media, about people who have had fatal diagnoses missed because of their body weight, because everything is being attributed to their size, and they're just told to lose weight rather than being tested for certain diagnoses or having certain things looked into. And I'll talk a little bit more in a bit about how this specifically affects mental health care. But this definitely, I'll just say now, applies to mental health care, that often mental health diagnoses are also overlooked, and people in larger bodies are just told everything can be solved if they just lose weight. They'll just be happier and feel better mentally if they just lose weight, when that's often not true and causes more harm than good. Next slide. So I just wanted to share some statistics about how common weight stigma is. At least 30% of higher weight girls and 24% of higher weight boys report being teased at school. So this starts at a really young age. And they're not learning it from each other. They're learning it from the adults around them. 1 in 3 children has experienced weight bias from a teacher. 69% of higher weight women have experienced weight bias from a physician. And higher weight women are paid 14.6% less than straight-sized women, which straight-sized is kind of another term for smaller bodied or average size. So as you can see, this is really quite prevalent. Next slide. I also wanted to share a little bit about diet culture, which goes hand in hand with weight stigma. So diet culture is the promotion of eating and exercising in pursuit of fitness rather than according to one's internal cues and nutritional needs. It involves the oversimplistic categorization of food as good or bad or healthy or unhealthy, which often leads to shame around eating and compensatory behaviors. And dieting is a very strong predictor of the development of eating disorders. Dieting is associated with a whole host of negative consequences. And I think 95 to 99% of diets fail. Don't work permanently in terms of leading to sustained weight loss. So it really ends up doing a lot more harm than good. And yet that's kind of constantly promoted because we value thinness so much over health. Next slide. So here are some of the effects of weight stigma, and these all can be effects as well of dieting and diet culture. Depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, body dissatisfaction, suicidal ideation and attempts, and disordered eating and eating disorders. So often just the stress of being marginalized, of facing that kind of discrimination that I mentioned, that all really leads to serious mental health consequences. Next slide. So I wanted to give some statistics about those and specifically eating disorders. The best known environmental contributor to the development of eating disorders is the sociocultural idealization of thinness. So there are lots of things that do contribute to eating disorders. Genetics or trauma definitely can predispose people to eating disorders. But the best known environmental contributor specifically is this idealization of thinness. And as an eating disorder therapist in training, this is something I hear over and over again about experiences of weight stigma directly leading to disordered eating behaviors. 40 to 60% of elementary school girls ages 6 to 12 are concerned about their weight. So that's a very, very young age for these types of concerns to start, and can definitely, again, be a huge risk factor for eating disorders. And 62.3% of teenage girls and 28.8% of teenage boys report trying to lose weight. So again, very, very young. Next slide. These are some more statistics on that. Over 1/2 of teenage girls and nearly 1/3 of teenage boys engage in disordered eating behaviors. And that includes skipping meals, fasting, smoking cigarettes for weight loss, vomiting, and taking laxatives. So these are all, again, just the very young ages to be engaging in some of these very risky behaviors. 13.2% of girls develop an eating disorder by age 20. Among adolescent males, the prevalence of eating disorders is 1.2% at 14 years, 2.6% at 17 years, and 2.9% at 20 years. And these may be underreported. That's a possibility that often new research comes out and we see that it's more common, and that these are underreported due to sample size or due to stigma. And also, as you can see here, there's not a lot of studies on like non-binary people or trans youth. So, and we do know that those populations are at much higher risk of disordered eating. So that's all something that could kind of increase this prevalence as well. And 1 in 8 adults have had suicidal thoughts due to negative body image. So this is something that really, really seriously affects people's mental health. Next slide. And I just wanted to give some more information on eating disorders, since that is kind of one of the most common or most well-known effects of weight stigma on mental health. Eating disorders are the second deadliest mental health condition, surpassed only by opioid use disorder. People with eating disorders of all sizes, and I really want to highlight that, that we often think of eating disorders as occurring in only thin people, only people of a certain size or of a certain race or a certain gender, when in reality, eating disorders can affect people of all sizes, races, genders, cultural backgrounds. They don't discriminate. But they're often missed in people in larger bodies because of that stereotype, and because we have this idea that if you're in a larger body, you must be eating excessively or you must not be exercising enough, when the reality is that restrictive eating disorders occur in people of all sizes, and that body size is not an indicator of how much someone is eating or how much they're restricting. So people with eating disorders of all sizes are at increased risk of a lot of different physical and neurological health complications, including heart failure, heart problems, kidney failure, GI problems, osteoporosis, insomnia, memory loss, and cognitive impairments. Eating disorders often lead to increased depression and anxiety, and even can induce paranoia and psychosis. Just the starvation and malnourishment over a long period of time absolutely affects the brain. And people with eating disorders face an extremely high risk of suicide. Next slide. I also wanted to talk a little bit about weight stigma and marginalized identities. Weight stigma disproportionately impacts people in minority groups, including people of color, LGBTQ people, disabled people, women, and trans people. Weight stigma is rooted in racism and patriarchy and is used to justify these forms of oppression often. Often people of color and women are more affected by weight stigma, and weight stigma is kind of used to say that, like, if people in these groups are larger, then that kind of justifies treating them more negatively. There's a really great book that I highly recommend on specifically the topic of weight stigma and racism called Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. And it really gives a great history of how the BMI has been used for like racist purposes, and how the notion of obesity, in quotes, has really been used to kind of marginalize people of color. And disordered eating is often under-recognized in minority groups. People of color and LGBTQ people are less likely to receive treatment for eating disorders. So that's something that's really important to recognize as well. Next slide. So I really wanted to talk about, in this conversation on weight stigma, the social determinants of health. We often have this idea that the biggest determinant of our health is what we eat and how much we exercise, and our weight. And we also have this idea that those are linked, that how much we eat and how much we exercise is linked to our weight, which is not true. And we also have this idea that both how we eat and how we exercise and our weight affects our health, and are the biggest determinant of any health consequences that we're facing. But the reality is that social and economic factors like race, gender, income, disability, other types of factors have a much greater impact on health than individual behaviors. So promoting weight loss as a solution to mental and physical health problems may come at the cost of addressing some of those issues. So often people of color and LGBTQ people, people in minority groups are told that when they're experiencing health issues, they're told that they just need to lose weight, that will solve it, rather than looking at, hey, maybe the issue here is that you're facing systemic oppression, or facing an inequity that actually needs to be addressed, rather than just telling someone to lose weight. Next slide. So this is kind of a study that was done on what does affect health and the percentage that each factor plays, the percentage role that affects like quality of life and health status. So as you can see, social and economic factors make up 40% of what determines health. So that's a lot. That's a big portion. 20% is clinical healthcare. 10% is physical environment factors, and only 30% is health behaviors. That includes not just like eating and exercise, but things like substance use. I believe that includes things like wearing a seatbelt, things like smoking. So when you really look at the big picture, eating and exercise really don't make up that much of our health or don't influence it. nearly as much as many other behaviors. And by the way, this is excluding genetics. These are only modifiable determinants of health. So genetics also, of course, plays a huge role. Next slide. So this is a video made by the National Eating Disorders Association by some fat activists and body liberation activists. So I wanted to share that. The sound isn't playing. You might need to unmute.
Can you not see it?
I can see it, but I can't hear it. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that.
Yes, I don't hear it either.
So Catherine, stop sharing your screen and share it again, but make sure to check to use the audio.
Okay.
Can we get our phones on silent, please, everybody?
Take 1, second sticks.
The first time I went on a diet, I was 8. And then I went on diets all the way until I was 18.
I grew up in a family that's very, very weight and diet focused. And so my body was not accepted in my entire life growing up. I've also had an eating disorder for over 2 decades.
I was getting some new clothes for the new teaching job that I got. And I was publicly body shamed while I was shopping. There's this version of toxic masculinity where men aren't supposed to talk about how they feel. A lot of my guy friends are going to be like, oh, man up, or, you know, you need to go to the gym, or suck it up. I didn't really need to hear that. I needed somebody to tell me that how I felt was okay.
It's something that happens all the time. That's because our world is built with thin people in mind.
I think that if we don't talk about how weight stigma is impacting eating disorders, we're doing everyone a disservice.
It's hard to like tell a guy to accept his body when he doesn't feel like people even accept his skin tone. And I really feel like a lot of women of color, or like a lot of men of color, are not even in the conversation most of the time.
We all deserve to be able to say, hi, I'm in pain, and be listened to. I saw these fat babes doing cool shit on the internet, and I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to make cool shit on the internet. If I could save a younger version of me, or someone who like fits into my identities, from all that pain and suffering and like exhaustion, like that's what I want to do with my time.
I wanted to kind of show my story. Sometimes Instagram is a highlight reel of everyone's perfect moments, but that's just not the reality. Everyone struggles and everyone goes through pain. And so I thought it was just really important to kind of call that out and be honest about what really goes on.
I created like a space where I take like body positivity and the thing that made me body confident, which was fashion, to show men of all shapes and sizes that they can feel confident in their bodies.
We have our own little corner of the internet. It's called the Mermaid Kingdom, and it is a space for empathy and compassion and caring for one another and knowing that at like the end of the day, someone is there.
I wish I could be the poster child for, perfect recovery, but I feel like, honestly, recovery doesn't work like that. It's messy, it's long, it's complicated, it's painful.
So when people talk about body liberation, we're talking about people being able to get adequate medical care, no matter what size they are. People being able to get clothes no matter what size they are. People being able to have this space to be comfortable in their bodies no matter what size they are.
I encourage everyone to like really, dig into what makes them feel positive. For me, it's like things like my Buzz Lightyear socks, It's like, my cool hats.
I just want people to know that it doesn't have to reach this scary point and that they're worthy of getting help just as they are right now.
Your body is never the issue, never has been, never will be.
Thank you. Feel free to share any reflections on the video in the chat if you want, but I think it does a really good job of showing both the way that weight stigma can impact mental health and lead to disordered eating, and how it intersects with other forms of oppression as well, but also how spaces where body liberation is a focus and where people of all sizes are accepted and embraced, how that can be really healing and positive for people's mental health. Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how weight stigma specifically shows up in mental health services. So weight stigma is not, for some reason there's something that's like blocking the PowerPoint. I'm not sure. Okay, thanks. Weight stigma is not commonly recognized as a contributor to mental health issues. Often, I think we tend to blame people kind of as individuals for their mental health issues, or we tell people you just need to get over it or snap out of it, or we often look at mental health issues as purely genetic or purely biological, and we're not looking at some of the environmental factors that contribute. And certainly weight stigma is a huge factor that does contribute to mental health issues. So as clinicians or peer providers, we're not asking people, how has weight stigma impacted you? Do you feel that weight stigma has played a role in any of the issues you're experiencing now? And I think that could be really important. That might be playing a big role in whatever issue someone is experiencing. Eating disorders are under-recognized in individuals in larger bodies. As I kind of mentioned, we have this stereotype of what eating disorders look like. And we believe that anyone who doesn't fit that stereotype must not have an eating disorder. Substance use is often regularly asked about in like primary care visits or in mental health intakes for different services. So is sometimes symptoms of depression or anxiety are asked about, but we're not asking about symptoms of eating disorders. We're assuming that we can know whether someone has symptoms of an eating disorder based on their weight or their size. So it's really important to recognize that we can't know that eating disorders don't have a look, and that someone may be restricting their food intake regardless of what size body they're in. I also want to say, I've talked a little bit about restrictive eating disorders. Binge eating disorder too is an important eating disorder to recognize. And often what we find is that it results from restriction, that restriction is often the root of binge eating, and binging is the body's response sometimes to restriction. And so that's kind of another way that eating disorders are sometimes missed, or restriction is missed, that we talk as a culture a lot about overeating and binging and bad foods that people are eating and not looking at restriction. Clients in larger bodies are sometimes encouraged to diet or to lose weight instead of receiving quality mental health care. So again, there's this idea that people's diet is causing their mental health problems, or their weight is causing their mental health problems, that if people lose weight, everything will be better and they'll be happier. And that's really not often the case. And so that's often a reason that we kind of don't give quality mental health care. Weight loss is sometimes praised as a sign of health or psychological improvement without inquiry about possible disordered eating. Often if a client loses weight, it's just like, oh, good, I'm so glad. Like, that must be because they're making positive changes, without looking at, could that be due to disordered eating? And if so, by kind of reinforcing them for that behavior, is that reinforcing the eating disorder? Exercise, I wanted to just mention, that is very, very commonly prescribed in mental health settings as a way to improve mood. And I think especially for people in larger bodies, there's this idea of like, oh, like they need to exercise more, because that's a stereotype we have. And there's not really a discussion of over-exercise or compulsive exercise or ways that exercise can become disordered or exacerbate an eating disorder that's already there, because exercise can definitely be part of disordered eating. So yeah, that's something that we really need to discuss more and include more and kind of exercise more caution in prescribing that. Next slide. So I also wanted to share this graphic. It's from the website Science of Eating Disorders. So I'll start with the one on the top left. There's a lot of stereotypes about those who are affected by eating disorders. As I said, usually the idea is that eating disorders only affect white, young, thin women, not anyone else. And because those are so prevalent, that leads to clinicians failing to recognize eating disorders in, quote, atypical populations. The reason that's in quotes is that actually eating disorders are much more common in people in larger bodies, in minority populations, people of color, LGBTQ people. All of those communities have disproportionate rates of eating disorders. And yet we're still seeing that as atypical. So clinicians often fail to recognize that, don't really ask about it, don't provide treatment, and often encourage people to further restrict, to lose weight, to diet, because that's what's seen as the healthy thing. And then those individuals are further alienated from seeking help. Often, if you're not recognized as having an eating disorder, or you're not given help, then you're not going to continue to engage with the healthcare system. And because of that lack of engagement with the healthcare system, clinicians just continue to see individuals with eating disorders that do fit more of that stereotype, because that's the only people that are being recognized and seeking help for those disorders. So it kind of just leads to this vicious cycle where no one who doesn't fit the stereotype of what an eating disorder looks like is really getting recognized and getting help, which leads to further health disparities. So that's definitely something to think about too, that often the health disparities that we might attribute to quote, overweight or being at a higher weight actually may result from individuals being mistreated in the healthcare system, not being recognized as having certain health issues, including eating disorders, and not getting the right help, or people just in general being shamed in the healthcare system, having issues minimized, and then just not engaging with healthcare services, which of course is going to lead to negative health outcomes and disparities, but that might not be directly attributable to being at a higher weight. It might be more about how people are being treated. Next slide. So I wanted to share one person's story. This is a bit long, but I think it's just so important to be able to have the stories of people in larger bodies who have experienced disordered eating, and what that's been like. So this one says, when I was 16, I started starving myself and lost a lot of weight. I was never offered help. I wasn't offered outpatient eating disorder therapy or evaluated for a higher level of care. It was 1998. I was a Christian teenager who came from a white working class family living in a middle class suburb. I was straight and cis passing. At the time, I did not have an understanding of eating disorders at all. In fact, even if someone had educated me on what eating disorders were, I don't think I would have even thought that I was included in that definition. And that in and of itself is part of the problem. I had all the symptoms, but because I was fat, it seemed impossible that I could be struggling with something socially defined as a disorder that seemed to exclusively affect smaller people. Next slide. Thanks. In some ways, when I tell my story, I feel that I have to express the deep, intense pathologies that I experienced in order for people to believe me. I barely ate. I'd lie about having a meal so no one would question me. I would flush food down the toilet to hide food and give the appearance that the food had been eaten. I'd track everything that I ate while making sure it was not above the ridiculously low calorie count that I set for myself. I exercised frequently. I could not stop thinking about food. I could feel my heart pounding in my abdomen when I laid in bed at night with an empty stomach. Despite all of this, I was still perceived as fat according to medical standards. Next slide. After several months of this, I stopped being able to tolerate starving myself and needed a way to cope with eating and my intense fear of weight gain. I started making myself throw up, using diet pills and laxatives to compensate for what I ate. Having to eat heightened my sense of feeling out of control and posed a greater threat of gaining weight. I spent hours upon hours preoccupied with hiding what I was doing, and I would lie if needed. My preoccupation with food and potential weight gain didn't just have an impact on how I behaved around eating. My entire life was affected by the obsession that I couldn't let go, that was egged on by everything around me. My grades plummeted. I was constantly exhausted. I couldn't process information easily. I was ashamed of my dishonesty and fearful someone would confront me about lying. Next slide. I was almost the poster child for a Lifetime movie on teen girls with eating disorders, except I was still fat. And looking back, I'm not sure that I was a girl. So I couldn't possibly have had an eating disorder, right? Despite the fact that I remained fat throughout my eating disorder, I did experience weight loss. And when I lost weight from all the starving and purging, I was complimented. Instead of being offered eating disorder treatment, which is what I desperately needed, I received copious amounts of praise everywhere I went for losing weight. And so I pressed on. I tried harder. I restricted more. Next slide. Being congratulated is what happens when a larger bodied person loses weight. It does not matter how they lost the weight. It could be from an eating disorder, grief, or even a serious illness like cancer. This is one of the many reasons why we should not ever comment on someone's weight loss. We do not know the circumstances of why they lost weight. If it happens to be that they lost weight intentionally, we only encourage disordered eating and body dissatisfaction. And that is exactly what happened to me and what happens to so many others like me. And that's by Sarah J. Thompson. And that's a link to their blog. I highly recommend following them and their work. And I'll have more resources to kind of follow at the end of this. Next slide. So this is one more personal story. It's a little bit shorter. I grew up with the message that to be loved in my family, I needed to be thin. Of course, that message was confirmed further by our thin obsessed culture, and I spent the majority of my life fighting against my naturally larger body. During my periods of anorexia, I saw how much better I was treated in my smaller body, and it made me even more determined to fight for my life and stand up to the fat phobia I saw happening to people in larger bodies. In my smaller body, I was praised for my weight loss, even though I was dying. No one made assumptions or judgments about my health. I was able to find clothes at any store I walked into, and living in my smaller body felt so much safer. Next slide. But that safety and relief came at the cost of everything else in my life. As my body shrunk, so did my entire life. I couldn't participate at holidays because I was afraid of being around food. I turned down travel opportunities because I was worried about not having access to the few foods I'd allow myself to eat. I completely isolated myself from all social events because starving and exercising came before everything else. My eating disorder took years away from me that I can never get back. And that's by Shira Rosenbluth, an eating disorder therapist. She was also in the video that was shown earlier, another person that I highly recommend following her work. Next slide. So this is one of the takeaways that I really hope is kind of one of the key points that you get from this presentation if you don't take away anything else. I also really recommend following this blog, Dances with Fat. The creator of this is Reagan Chastain, and you can follow her on social media too. She has a lot of great graphics like this. But you can tell by looking at a fat person that they are fat. That's it. Not what they eat, not how much they exercise, definitely not if they have an eating disorder, and definitely not how smart they are. You also might be able to tell if you have any prejudices or biases that are coming up, or if you're making any assumptions. And that's a good thing to notice and work on. But that doesn't mean that any of those assumptions that are coming up for you, or that any of the prejudices that you have are true. They're just kind of things that we've been told and stereotypes that we all have ingrained. But there's something to recognize and challenge when that happens. Next slide. So here's just some more information about how you can start to combat weight stigma. I think given that it's Eating Disorder Awareness Week, this is a really good time to be thinking about this issue and to be thinking about ways that you might want to help prevent eating disorders and disordered eating by challenging weight stigma. So first, one of the first things you can do is to challenge any assumptions you have about people's character, eating or exercise habits, or health status on the basis of their size, and just really recognize that you really can't tell someone's health status by looking at them. Be willing to challenge any misconceptions you have about what people with eating disorders look like. I think one of the most hurtful things that's really commonly said to people with eating disorders is you don't look like you have an eating disorder. So really trying to notice like the impulse to say that or to think that someone does or doesn't look like they have an eating disorder that you can't tell by looking at someone. Another way you can combat weight stigma is to use terms like people in larger bodies or higher weight people rather than the O words. And focus on complimenting people's character and internal strengths rather than weight loss. So really just, I would suggest not focusing on appearance at all or weight, and really just focusing more on the qualities that people have. But the last story that I read, or the one before that, kind of talked about how harmful it can be to compliment weight loss. You never know when you're complimenting someone's eating disorder or someone's illness or a decline in mental health that has resulted in weight loss. So it's really helpful just not to focus on that. Next slide. And these are all ways that you could be contributing to someone's eating disorder, all things that are kind of done in our culture that, you know, if you made the choice to kind of notice yourself doing that or notice others doing that and challenge it when it happens, that can be really helpful. And this isn't like to shame anyone for doing any of these things, because these all are ingrained in us in a lot of ways. And we're told that we should do some of these things, or told that it's okay or not that big of a deal. But it's more just to help you be aware of ways that you could potentially reduce some of these behaviors and act in a more positive way and be more supportive toward people with disordered eating. So making fun of someone's eating habits or food choices, complimenting weight loss, we talked about that. Labeling foods as good or bad, I would add to that labeling them healthy or unhealthy. The reality is all foods have something of nutritional value that our bodies can use. We do need enough calories to survive, and calories in of themselves are a nutrient in a lot of ways. All foods have carbs, protein, or fat, all of which we need. So just kind of looking at foods as being good and being a way to nourish ourselves rather than something to kind of shame people for or categorize. Placing judgment on the bodies of others, responding negatively to changes in others' bodies, encouraging unhealthy fitness habits. So really any type of exercise that you're encouraging that is for the purpose of like weight loss or for the purpose, I think in our culture, a lot of people say things like, oh, I need to go run so that I can burn off X food, or if I'm going to eat this, then I need to exercise after, which kind of promotes this disordered idea that you have to earn your food rather than just acknowledging that we all need to nourish ourselves. And exercise and movement can certainly be a positive thing. It can be a positive way to improve our mood or feel better, but it's not ever something we need to do to earn our food or to meet a certain standard. So yeah, just avoiding encouraging that. Criticizing your own eating habits or weight. I think this is a really important one because I think this is one that's really encouraged in our culture. We're constantly kind of told that it's okay or acceptable, or it's often a way to kind of fit in or even just like make small talk to be like, I'm so bad, I just ate X, or I really shouldn't be eating XYZ. But you never know if someone with disordered eating or an eating disorder or someone in a larger body is hearing that, and that might negatively impact them. And someone in a larger body might be hearing that as like, oh, you don't want to eat a certain food and become larger and have a body that looks like theirs. Like that might ultimately be the implication. I am not sure what happened to Catherine.
Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think I lost you for a second.
Okay.
Do you want me to go back?
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead and share your screen again, Catherine.
I can't seem to. It's not letting me get to that part.
Okay, I can try to pull it up.
I can get it. Just give me a minute.
Okay, thank you. Oh, someone said she needs host privileges. I don't know.
I'm gonna try again here.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone, just bear with us. It was
All
getting,
fun in the time of COVID, isn't it?
it was getting so good too.
I knew things were going too smoothly for us.
I know.
Thanks everyone for your patience. Here we go.
Yes.
I got it. Where were
Thank
There
you.
we go.
Is that it?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
The one on this side, if you can just click that.
This one?
It's the one above this. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we were at like criticizing your own eating habits or weight. I think that can come across as like, I don't want to look like someone in a larger body, or I don't want to eat something that will make me look like that. Or, you know, saying it could come across as saying like this food is bad or this food is unhealthy for all people. Another big one is assuming that someone wants to lose weight or change their body. Just kind of making that assumption based on body size, when that may not be the case at all. Expecting perfection, just kind of holding people in general to rigid standards around food and around weight, but also around just general life things. I think that can contribute to lots of different mental health issues. And then lastly, speaking negatively about bodies, just in general, kind of categorizing bodies as unhealthy or healthy, or I don't want to look like that, or I do want to look like that. I think just trying to stay positive about bodies and a diversity of all different types of bodies can be really helpful. Next slide. So this is more kind of, it says Thanksgiving convo tips, but it can just be for life in general. So some things not to say, I'll have to run a mile after all that food. As I kind of mentioned before, we don't need to earn our food. We don't need to punish ourselves for eating. Yeah, we all need to nourish ourselves regardless of how much exercise we do or don't do. my diet will start tomorrow and today I'll be bad. I think that's really commonly said on holidays, but just like in general, I think. But the reality is that there are no bad foods, and you aren't bad for eating something. There's just food, and all foods can be part of a healthy diet. I didn't eat all day, so now I can eat this food. You don't have to restrict yourself in order to nourish yourself. That's really important. And then kind of this idea of like policing other people's food, like careful, that's a lot of fat and carbs and sugar. Bodies need fat and carbs and sugar, and it's good and healthy to eat what your body is craving, especially on holidays. Like carbs and fat and sugar are an important part of many holidays in many different cultures. So that's positive. And just in general, like policing people's food or commenting or even saying something like that's a lot of food or that's not a lot of food or you're eating so much, in general, that can be really harmful. So just focusing on the conversation rather than the food can be helpful. Next slide. I also wanted to just share some information about combating weight stigma in mental health care. So this is specifically for mental health advocates, mental health clinicians, disability advocates, people who work in and around mental health services. So one strategy for combating weight stigma in these spaces is to advocate for and provide weight inclusive care that acknowledges the impacts of weight stigma on mental health. And that is really affirming toward people of all body sizes. There are some really good resources on kind of how to provide weight inclusive care. There's a paradigm called health at every size that many healthcare providers use to really provide that kind of affirming care and just promote healthy behaviors in people of all sizes and not focus on weight. So I would definitely recommend looking into that. Make sure size diversity is included in diversity and inclusion initiatives. I often see size missing. So just really making sure that is part of being inclusive. Advocate for mental health settings to be accessible to people in larger bodies. I think this is one way that weight stigma really intersects with disability rights and disability justice, is that we really need to make sure that we have large enough chairs, large enough like gowns in inpatient settings, large enough office furniture and things like that. And also like on websites for mental health services or mental health providers, and in the building, like if there's pictures or magazines that they're showing people in larger bodies in a positive way, and that there's a diversity of body sizes included and represented so that people know they're welcome. Challenge the promotion of weight loss and dieting within mental health settings. Yeah, there can just be a lot of that. Sometimes therapists will tell people in larger bodies, therapists, psychiatrists, other mental health providers, to lose weight as a way of managing their mental health, or even like in peer services, people can refer to different groups or diet groups, or even like 12-step programs that are encouraging people to restrict their food and not necessarily to have a healthy relationship with their body size and with food. So really challenging that and making sure people know the value of promoting size acceptance and kind of a more positive approach to food in all settings. And advocate for insurance coverage of eating disorder treatment for people of all body sizes. This is a really big issue, that people in larger bodies with eating disorders are often denied coverage of care because of the influence of this stereotype of who really does have an eating disorder and how severe eating disorders are, this idea that that can be determined by body size. So really advocating for other criteria besides that to be used to determine insurance coverage, or better yet, advocating for universal healthcare where that's not necessarily, people aren't being denied coverage for certain services that are really needed. Next slide. And then this is just ways to challenge cultural weight stigma, which really anyone can do, regardless of your specific role. So speak out about the harmful effects of weight stigma. I think people don't really know often. This topic just isn't often spoken about, and we don't really think about it a lot. We often are just told being in a higher weight is bad, being in a lower weight is good. That's all the information that we're kind of given. So really speaking out about how harmful that is, and sharing any knowledge you have about how it's more complex than that. Follow and share the work of fat activists, healthcare professionals, and recovery advocates. You can definitely look up there's a lot of lists that people have put together of fat activists and healthcare professionals and eating disorder recovery advocates. But that can definitely be a really good way to promote messages that are challenging weight stigma. And then challenge misconceptions about weight stigma and eating disorders that you hear in your workplace, school, or everyday life. Just really, whenever you have the chance, sharing that that's not the case, or that things are more complex than just higher weights being negative. Next slide. Did I freeze?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'm not seeing the next slide. I could try.
It looks like she dropped. I'll go ahead and open it up.
Okay, thank you.
I think you're just at the references now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to go over some of those. So if you want to go to the next slide. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so these are some great references. The National Eating Disorder Association has a really good page on weight stigma that just gives kind of an overview. There's some really good statistics from the National Eating Disorder Association and from NAFA, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. So I would definitely recommend looking into both of those. The Obesity Action Coalition, which I really do not like that word, they have some good statistics and some good information on the impact of weight stigma. So that could be helpful to look at. But in general, I would definitely recommend looking at the National Eating Disorder Association and NAFA as there's more updated information about weight, and they're not using some of the language like the O words. I actually co-wrote a piece on combating weight stigma in mental health recovery spaces, and like specifically peer-led spaces with a few fat activists. And that's on Medium. So that's that piece right there. That might be helpful for those of you who are coming to this from like the peer movement or from being a peer specialist or who want to get involved with that. Because I think there can be a lot of weight stigma in those spaces, just as there is in any space. Yeah, and then next slide. These are three resources that I highly recommend for further reading and learning. The Food Psych podcast is hosted by the dietitian Christy Harrison, who talks a lot about health at every size and intuitive eating, which are kind of ways of eating and engaging in the world and in healthy behaviors and providing healthcare in ways that are affirming of all weights and sizes. And every episode, she has either like a fat activist or eating disorder recovery advocate or eating disorder therapist or dietitian come on the show and kind of share a different perspective. And that's something that has been super helpful to me and to many, many people in eating disorder recovery and doing body acceptance work. So I highly recommend that. Also the Association for Size Diversity and Health and the National Eating Disorders Association. Next slide. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, so that's it. Thank you, Shira. We really appreciate you. This is an awesome presentation. We really appreciate you taking the time to get all this information together. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. I know I did. Learn a lot that I did not know and things that I will not do anymore, or at least be more mindful of it. So we're going to move on into the questions and answers. For those who are joining us by Zoom online, you can ask your question by raising your hand, wait for us to call on you, and then unmute when you're prompted. And for those who are over the telephone, you can ask your question by pressing *9 to raise your hand, wait for us to call on you, and then press *6 to unmute yourself. I'm going to start off by just giving you what we have in the chat. I have a couple of comments I'm just going to read real quick from Gina. Gina said, how great this awareness is happening now. I suffered my whole life. And then we had a comment from Robin that said she had to leave to exit the call, but I really thank you all for presenting this on this topic. I have a saying. Her saying is, I wear fat like a fur coat. And this little ditty has served me well throughout the years. So that's Robin saying. Thank you, Robin. If you're not on anymore, but I did let her know that we appreciate her attending. And Gina, thank you for your comment. There are some Q&As that I'm going to read off to you. Again, Robin says, this is great information. I'm glad we are willing to have this conversation. I would like to have a copy of the slide signs you may be contributing to someone's ED. So will that be available, Shira?
I can definitely send the slides to whoever could put that on the website, and that could just be on the website. I know that graphic specifically is from Body Brave Canada. If people want to look that up, I think it was shared on their Instagram.
Okay, thank you. From Laurel, she made a comment. I am watching a class online for student in nutrition. Her first class, she mentioned to look at food, not good or bad, and that we will all need each food group. It was interesting that you focus on that. First time I have ever seen it. Okay.
Awesome.
And also, Laurel, also, I'm not sure if she had a question, but she says, since COVID, my family members has started to drink beer at 11 a.m. to fill herself up to avoid eating until dinner. Because I'm working from home, I am not on a work schedule, and she has been more on a laid back lifestyle as well. It has an impact on her life. So I don't know if you want to just comment on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think COVID is just because of the pandemic and all of the changes that have happened, we're seeing a lot of increased disordered eating. And that's definitely, I think we're seeing increased substance use too. Those can intersect, that sometimes people do use substances to avoid eating. Yeah, I imagine that has a huge impact, and I'm sorry that you're going through that and that your family member is going through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Shira. The anonymous person, thank you so much for speaking on this topic and the importance of understanding how weight stigma impacts mental health. Can you talk about ways to combat white supremacy within weight stigma and an eating disorder education?
Yeah, definitely. I think the eating disorder field is predominantly white, and there's not a lot of Black therapists and Black dietitians and Black researchers in the field. So that really needs to change. I think there are some initiatives happening to try to get more people of color into the field and provide different scholarships and opportunities. So we definitely need more of that. For resources on that, again, I definitely want to recommend Fearing the Black Body, which kind of details how the history of how we have thought about weight for the past several hundred years is really due to racism. And so I think that's a really important read. It is pretty like academic, like it reads more like a dissertation. So if that's something that you might not prefer, I think the author Sabrina Strings, if someone wants to write that in the chat, has done a lot of like interviews and talks on different podcasts. She's written some articles. So I really highly recommend that because I think that's something that really needs to inform the eating disorder world and the eating disorder field. Another great like body liberation, fat liberation activist who also talks about it from an intersectional approach and talks a lot about white supremacy is Sonia Renee Taylor. I would also recommend the work of Virgie Tovar. And then also there's a dietitian named Jessica Wilson. And she's been sharing a lot about kind of white supremacy in the eating disorder field and how that impacts things and how we can challenge it. She has a podcast called My Black Body. So I highly recommend her work too.
Okay, thank you. One more for the chat, and then we have a few raised hands. Thank you. Wendy says, thank you Vera for the information. Are you going to be providing certificates?
I am not sure about that. Yeah, maybe Catherine would be able to answer that. I don't think so.
We didn't apply for any sort of continuing education credit for tonight's presentation, but if for some reason you need verification that you attended, just send us an email and we can do that for you.
Okay. Okay, so we have Patrick. Go ahead, Patrick.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, Shara. Good evening, Annette. I'm really glad to have been participating in this presentation. It was really great. And actually, I do have a question. Like, how can, like, to put it this way, you can address body positivity on people with autism? Because sometimes, I mean, not all, I would say they can be oblivious around the world that they live, you know, and sometimes, I mean, they cannot discern whether someone is maybe saying something derogatory to them, like when it comes to, like, you know, let's say their body weight, like let's say either they're big or they're small, and like sometimes, I mean, their feelings can get hurt. So like, how is like a good way to, you know, to, let's say, help them, like saying, not listen to those people that would say something derogatory to them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that kind of like I mentioned, weight stigma disproportionately impacts people in marginalized groups, and certainly disabled people are a marginalized group impacted, I think, extra by weight stigma. And I think weight stigma can intersect a lot with ableism, especially like against autistic folks and people, neurodivergent people. Sometimes people are told, I've certainly had the experience of being told that like, if I dieted or if I lost enough weight or if I ate only clean foods or whatever, then I wouldn't be experiencing as many mental health issues, or I would be like less neurodivergent. So I think this topic is super important for autistic people and neurodivergent people, all people with all disabilities. So I'm really happy that you brought that up. But yeah, I think there just needs to be more awareness about that connection and more of an understanding. I think often like eating disorder treatment providers and mental health providers in general, as well as like educators who are working with that population, may not really have learned about weight stigma and how it might have a negative impact. So I definitely think that's an area to work on to increase that. I also wanted to mention there's a lot of people doing work around both neurodiversity and like health at every size and like weight stigma. The person who immediately came to mind to follow is Noreen Hunani. I can put that in the chat. But I know she's a dietitian, a neurodivergent dietitian. I think she openly identifies as having ADHD, but she talks a lot about kind of the intersection between those and how important it is for both issues to be talked about. So thank you.
Thank you, Shira.
Oh, you're muted, Annette.
Okay, Lauren, you can go ahead. Lauren, you there? You can unmute yourself. You there, Lauren? Okay, I'm gonna go to Denise and then I'll come back to Lauren once we get that fixed out. Denise?
Hi. I appreciate the fact that you talk about language, or not to identify with the food that you eat. I appreciate that part. And what you say to somebody who have that, who lost the weight and who can who you do not know why they lost the weight. I appreciate that. I'll be mindful of not saying certain things to that individual.
Were you finished, Denise?
Yes.
Sorry, did you have a question or?
It's not quite any more like a comment about
Okay. Yeah.
what it was that you presented. I have a disability and I am a disability advocate. So I do not like it when people say, oh you are, I am so proud of you because you achieve certain things. So I can appreciate not saying certain things. I appreciate what you said about understanding about the individual, what they eat, or they lost the weight.
Awesome. I'm glad that was helpful. And yeah, I think there are a lot of parallels between like sizeism and fat phobia and ableism and some of the things that people say to both groups. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Right.
Thank you, Denise, for your comment. Okay, Lauren, are you there now?
I think so.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. I have two things. First thing is that I'm a blind person, so I couldn't see the slides. And I wondered if there is some way that you could email the text of all of this to me, because I think I missed out on quite a bit of what was presented.
Yeah, I definitely would like to do that. I mean, I can definitely email the slides. I think they're going to be posted on the website, but I don't know if you need like a file in like Word.
Yeah, I need the
or...
text.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah,
or plain
absolutely, no
text.
problem. Thank you, Lauren. We can do that for you, not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then the other thing is that I have so much trouble with medical people, and I had a pain specialist tell me he couldn't work with me anymore because I had to lose weight or they wouldn't do a hip replacement. And so he just dropped me from his practice. And that was really hard on me to deal with that. And I also had the same kind of thing with an orthopedist who treated me really badly and, said that I was, really too big and too disabled and all of that, but except he used the word handicapped, which I don't like. And he never did, acknowledge my personhood at all. And so, I'm wondering if there are surgeons anywhere who will do hip replacements on a person who's plus size, because they just, all of them tell me no, that I have to lose weight first.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That's awful and sounds like a terrible experience. But yeah, there is a directory of like health at every size aligned providers that are committed to providing weight inclusive care. I can maybe we can post that on our site, but I think it's the website is called like Hayes Community, and then there's a directory. So you may be able to find a physician.
What's the website called?
Hayes Community. So that's HAES, Health at Every Size Community, and there's a directory on it. But
he every size community.
Health at Every Size.
Health at Every Size.
Yeah, Hayes. Yeah, so you may be able to find a physician on there. I think thank you, Annette. I think last I checked, there's not like a ton of resources in Florida. But
I'm not in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So how would I find?
You can search by state. So hopefully maybe you're in a state with more resources. Yeah, and then also sometimes I've seen posts like that on like Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups for like health at every size, specific groups where you may be able to post and kind of say what kind of physician you're needing and see if anyone knows of any specialists or anyone who even just might be able to refer you somewhere if you met with them. So yeah, but I would definitely see if you can find a Hayes aligned provider if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, I think I got just a few more comments. Patrick, who you just asked the question, said it was an excellent presentation because I work with young adults with disabilities that needs this type of body positivity talk. Thank you for that, Patrick.
Thank you.
And then also, we have Maria says, a friend of mine has an eating disorder and started gaining a lot of weight. He was very skinny a couple of years ago, and I have seen that her daughters are kind of coping her behavior. How can I help the girls to avoid having an eating disorder.
Yeah, I'm sorry your friend is going through that, and that's great that you want to maybe provide some resources. Yeah, I would definitely say referring them to any of the resources at the end of the PowerPoint, especially the National Eating Disorder Association, could be really helpful, just so that I think the National Eating Disorder Association has a directory too of like eating disorder providers if they're wanting to get therapy or see a dietitian. It also just has really good information. The Alliance for Eating Disorders is another good resource for that. And then definitely the Association for Size Diversity and Health. So yeah, I think maybe just providing some resources and sharing anything you know of that could be helpful if they're open to that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Also, Shira, Patrick wants to know, do you do this presentation for other organizations?
Yeah, I do. I think I just raised my hand. Yeah, I do. This is something I do a lot of different like presentations on weight stigma, health at every size, eating disorders. So please feel free to connect with me if that's something you're interested in.
Okay. And let's make sure I don't have anybody else. No more hands raised. And I don't think I missed any other questions. Let's see, open. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other ones here, so I think that's it.
Okay. I am just going to type my email in the chat in case anyone wants to get in touch if you have further questions.
Okay. So, and Catherine, I think you did place that this will be on the website.
Yes, this is going to be on the website. There will be a page devoted to the topic with some further reading resources, as well as a link to the blog that you wrote, Shira, and also the podcast that you recorded on this topic, which is really informative and interesting to listen to. And we will certainly provide an option to Lauren and others who need the text-only version to help assist with reviewing the slides that were presented tonight.
Okay. And Lauren has another question.
Yes. Could you say the email address and the website?
Yeah, it's SHIRA, Shira.Collings, COLLINGS @gmail.com. That's mine. And then
what was it again?
SHIRA.COLLINGS @gmail.com.
Okay.
And then I don't know Disability Rights Florida's website off the top of my head.
That's okay. It's disabilityrightsflorida.org. So you should find it. If you just type in Disability Rights Florida, it'll take you right there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And we can email you directly to Lauren. I think we have your email from the list of attendees. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
I just want to thank everyone who attended, and thank you so much, Annette and Catherine, for helping moderate and sharing your slides. And thank you so much to our interpreters as well, Mackenzie and Valerie. I really appreciate all you did. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm super grateful to be able to share this with Disability Rights Florida.
All right. Thank you, Shira. You did an awesome job. We really, really appreciate you. And I'm sure this information is well needed. I thank everyone that attended this evening. Thank everyone that participated the questions. We thank you, and we thank you, Catherine, Mackenzie, and everyone for helping us be able to successfully put on this presentation. Look on our website for more webinars that we will be doing in the future. Catherine, you have any last minute thing?
No, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate our PAIMI Advisory Council Chair and Vice Chair, Annette and Shira. You two are really invaluable to the work we do here, and thanks for your knowledge and your, you know, your just constant enthusiasm and help to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to also add, I know the person who, I believe it was Wendy, who asked about the certificate, she was saying something about a CEU, for CEU, so I'm not sure what we do with that, Catherine.
I can email her. We did not apply for CEUs. This wasn't, you know, that type of presentation, but if there's anything we can do in terms of providing information to assist her, I'm going to reach out to her and see what we can coordinate.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and everyone have a blessed and wonderful evening. And we thank you again. Look forward to seeing some of you at our future presentations.